at the beginning, but you may ask your questions through the chat function.
Opening that up. No part of me is laughing at that. I can send you some pictures of me and a couple of pregnant flight suits.
I did have a question where I was just thinking that I wasn't aware that you did so much kind of local work. I knew about, disaster relief, but I didn't know about doing work on drug prevention and all those kind of things. And what percentage, just like, is it a third of your work that's kind of more civilian aid versus, I'm not sure if that's the right term. Do you?
Yeah, so I'd say that specific mission set for us, we work under Coast Guard authorities because Posse Comitatus, basically military can't work within US without permission. So we are under the Coast Guard. For my squadron, I'd say about a third of our detachments right now are somewhere in kind of that sort of mission set. Everything else is overseas. And then the other one kind of, disaster relief. Like I said, the other one is kind of the comfort deployment. That is under the Navy, but that's, going into a bunch of different countries and helping as well, but not in kind of a traditional military role.
Yeah.
So I'd say about, a third to maybe half in some years.
Right.
Lorraine, have you seen the other questions that are?
Yes.
Okay.
I wanted to say, one of them was from Jane. My niece was an F-18 pilot, one of 18 women flying jets at the time. Do you have an idea of how many women pilots there are in the Navy now?
I'll open it up to the other speakers if they have more updated data. I know when I was coming up for helicopters, we sat around 12%. My ward room right now is probably pretty similar, just objectively off of what I have. I'd say I have about 5 of 50 pilots are female.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Thank you.
And well, people are just wanted to say that was a really great presentation and awesome words of advice. And they were wondering, one of our people from Cal State University of San Marcos was wondering, how has the pandemic impacted your work this year?
In every way, shape, and form that I could never have imagined before it. I won't say it's all negative either. I think probably everybody sitting on this side of this panel will say that COVID is nothing we ever trained to, expected, or really knew how to deal with. I never thought I would be making medical determinations as kind of one of my primary decisions. I think it was a challenge in that it wasn't something we had a playbook for how to address that anybody had seen. I've also been very impressed at a personal level within our squadron. We actually had better results when we stopped working as much and spaced out and gave people less time and less ability to do their job, that if they were motivated, they came in and they actually did it better. So I've been very impressed with kind of down to our enlisted sailor levels. They've kept our aircraft up just as well as they did before. They've kept everything running that we need to keep doing our job. Hardest part, it has been, we have some very junior personnel that are incredibly isolated, and managing that from a leadership point of view. If I look at an 18 or 19-year-old that may have spent a year living on their own in a room, they haven't traveled home, they weren't able to see their families. For a while, they couldn't even go to the gym or still can't go to a restaurant. It is maintaining that kind of support network in this environment has been probably the hardest challenge. And then the second hardest challenge has been just keeping track of everybody who has a sniffle. That now, like a cold is now a potential disaster, and kind of keeping every piece. But since I've been on this phone, I got a text about somebody that's coughing. So kind of keeping that and knowing that there also is a very real threat out there, and kind of just the management piece of it is more than I would have guessed.
But that's a real credit to the team that they've had the diligence and enthusiasm to keep everything going, if less support and less time, isn't it? Yeah. And
Sorry, we don't have time for more questions,
okay.
although we have more questions. Maybe one last question.
Yes, one of the questions was about mentors and role models. Was it difficult for you to find mentors or role models that connected with you? And how did you do it?
I don't really think it was, because I never tied it to a gender. Like most of my mentors and role models were males, kind of a tour ahead of me or 2 tours ahead of me. Additionally, I did have the advantage of when I was an aide de camp in Bahrain, the admiral I worked for was female, who was one of the first 4 female pilots.
Right.
So that was kind of very early in my career. I was working with somebody who was she was the 2nd class of Naval Academy grads. I had female and was kind of right on that front edge. So I kind of always had her as well. I had somebody I needed to talk to kind of on that lane, but yeah, I'd say really it was just people I worked with a little bit ahead of me that I enjoyed working with and just would go to with questions. They didn't really have a choice whether they answer at that point in the mentorship role.
The impression
Thank you so much.
your comments is that in a way you just saw yourself as a member of the Navy Air Force as opposed to a woman, and you didn't let that get in the way.
And for me, that would be accurate.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Commander Pinkney. And now we're going to move to Commander Leslie Mintz, who may or may not explain how she got that nickname. She's a Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania native who received a BS in Systems Engineering from the University of Virginia, and her commission from ROTC in 2000, attended Naval Flight Officer training in Pensacola, Florida, graduating with distinction and receiving her Wings of Gold in 2002, and reported to the Diamondbacks of VFA 102 in Lemoore, California. In 2006, she reported for Top Gun training and became a strike fighter tactics instructor, becoming an instructor in Virginia Beach, then reporting to the Black Lions of VFA 213 as the training officer. She participated in Operation Enduring Freedom on the USS Theodore Roosevelt and was awarded the Navy League Squadron Weapons System Officer of the Year. She received her master's in international studies from the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey. Additionally, completed her Joint Professional Military Education Phase 1, and in 2018, joined the Black Lions as Executive Officer, assuming command in November 2019. A recipient of the Defense Meritorious Service Medal, 3 Strike Flight Air Medals, 3 Navy Commendation Medals, 2 Navy Achievement Medals, and various campaign and unit medals. She has 3,000 flight hours. Commander Mintz, welcome.
Thank you, Norlin, for the it's a great honor to be here, and everyone in the AAUW. I didn't know very much about your organization until being asked to speak here. So learning about what you do to further women equity, opportunities, equality, just the opportunities you provide is quite phenomenal. I'm going to try again to share the screen with you here, and we'll make sure this works. Okay, can everyone see that? Great. Okay, as Norlin said, I'm Commander Leslie Mintz, the commanding officer of Strike Fighter Squadron 213, also known as VFA 213. We are the Black Lions. The gentleman standing next to me about my same height in a flight suit is Susan's husband, as we've mentioned before. So Susan does a lot. We joke that poor Brian is bossed around by 2 women at the same time, but Susan also helps out managing my squadron. So thank you, Susan. Let's see if we can get this next slide here. As was already stated, I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, PA. I am a graduate of Penn Hills High School. So I bring that up. I went to your average Joe public high school, and much like Susan said, okay, how am I going to pay for college? And I talk a lot about that when I talk to new check-ins in my squadron. There's always a why to why you join the Navy, and why'd you get here. And it doesn't mean that's how you're going to look at your Navy career 21 years later, but there's always a why. So for me, it was education. And I went down a little bit south to the University of Virginia and majored in systems engineering. As Norlin stated, I was designated a naval flight officer. For those that don't know, I fly the F-18 Super Hornet, but I sit in the back seat. So most of us here have seen the movie Top Gun. So that is Goose in the movie, and I am a Top Gun graduate. I've served both in multiple squadrons. This is my second time at VFA 213. I started in VFA 102. We actually in Lemoore, California, if you don't know where that is, kind of the Central Valley of California, certainly not as nice as San Diego. But I did enjoy living in California. We then did a home port change to Japan. So I lived in Atsugi, Japan for a couple years, and then came to the East Coast after graduating Top Gun, deployed with VFA 213, then went back out to the West Coast, where I went to the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California, which is a rather nice area of California to live for those that have been there, and we got a master's degree, also where I got engaged to my husband there. So and then went back to Lemoore, California. From there, went to the Pentagon and served in Washington, D.C., where I served on the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff as an action officer, and then came down to Oceana, Virginia, which is in Virginia Beach, and served as the executive officer and now the commanding officer. My husband is also active duty military. He is in Major Command in the Joint Program Office. He's working F-35, so the latest generation of jet fighter aircraft. He's in charge of the propulsion system there, and we have a 4-year-old daughter who keeps us on our toes. So that is my background. Not to be outdone by the helicopter pictures there. That is the airplane that we fly, the F-18 Super Hornet. The squadron that I'm in charge of is roughly 230 sailors, about 30 aircrew, and an average size of the squadron is about 12 aircraft. That fluctuates. We've gone down to 6 aircraft. We'll go back up to 12 aircraft. Wasn't going to hit too much on it, but it is a multi-role strike fighter aircraft, so kind of the latest and greatest in the fixed wing jet airplanes. It does both land and sea missions. For those that in San Diego, as you're pretty familiar with the aircraft carrier, we do deploy on the aircraft carrier as a carrier air wing within the carrier strike group. So that's what we do. And I have done that several times throughout my career, deploying for 6 to 9 to 11 months, as you saw with Roosevelt and being out at sea and Truman, et cetera. As I mentioned, we do a multitude of various roles to include air combat. So an air-to-air role, as you see in the picture here, for F-18s launching air-to-air missiles. We did that a couple of years ago down in Florida for training. We also do air to surface, kind of the last 20 years flying in Operation Enduring Freedom, Operation Inherent Resolve, Operation Iraqi Freedom, the airplane there carrying air to surface weapons or air to ground attack bombs, if you will. And that's a various host of what we do. For me, when we looked at, and a lot of this, really, thank you, Susan, for going first. A lot of this, we all kind of, I think what is unique and special about the Navy is a lot of us feel the same way, right? So a lot of what Susan said, I could not agree with more. It's it's doing what you love. It's choosing what you love, not just